Hello, friends, and welcome back to Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett, and today I have a great guest interview with me today, Mike Appleby. I'm going to have to look down and read all the things that Mike's involved with, but today we're going to talk about housing. And look, this is a big topic. Mike is, when I go through kind of his credentials, the things he's involved in, it's very local here in Washington State where we live. But as we're going to discuss, these are things that are either happening already in other parts of the country or coming to other parts of the country. And what we're going to discuss for those that are local to Washington State, Snohomish County in particular, this is going to be very relevant. But I think for our whole audience to understand how housing is progressing, especially when we talk about affordable housing and higher density housing, things of that nature, Mike's going to be able to give us a lot of insight, I think, on these topics. So before we get into it, I just want to give a little background on who Mike is and why listening to him is important. Now, besides the official positions that he holds, I just got to say this, Mike, is I'm in the investor community. I talk to a lot of people here locally that are investors, and it's almost impossible to talk to somebody who's involved at all in real estate development and investing that doesn't talk to you, consult with you, or seek your input or advice. So this is someone who I would say locally is the go-to resource on what's going on around Snohomish County and housing. So a couple things that Mike's involved with. He is on the Snohomish County tomorrow and Use Advisory Board for the County Council. He is on the Housing Policy Committee of the Master Builders. He's on the Affordable Housing Council for the Puget Sound. He is also part of the Region PAC Board, specifically around housing issues, and Project 42 Board that works with candidates that are looking to get into office. So I don't think you could be more involved, Mike, in what's going on locally with housing. So I want to thank you for taking the time to come on Market Shares. This is a conversation I've been trying to put together for a while. And I know that you speak a lot to real estate agents, investors, and all the like. So it's a privilege to have you here on Market Shares to share with our audience as well. So welcome.
Thank you.
So I think where, maybe we want to get started is I want to start with a topic I've discussed on the podcast here a few times, and then we'll go into some other things. But it's a really hot topic, which is around dadoos. And this is something that you're asked to speak about, I think, pretty frequently. You're pretty familiar with it. But when we talk about dadoos, we had the dadoo guy who's an investor that I work with who builds a lot of dadoos. I have multiple of my investor friends that are involved now in this part of the business. But it's not just an investment opportunity. It really is a solution for affordable housing. And I think, we can't lose that. But let's talk a little bit about what's transpired here in the last, 18, 24 months and what's going to be coming in the near future as it relates to dadoos. And for those that aren't aware, when I say dadoo, I'm talking about a detached auxiliary dwelling unit. Many people are familiar with like a mother-in-law type of a apartment or something that might be attached to their home. But there's a lot of new legislation allowing for detached structures as well, all throughout Washington State. This has been going on for quite a while in other states like California. But this is driven by, if I understand it correctly, a House bill that was passed in the state of Washington that's kind of requiring some implementation of some higher density regulations at a local city, county level. Let's just kind of unpack what's happened there and what it really means, not just for investment opportunities, but maybe also for consumers and for families that are looking for ways of maybe creating multi-generational households without having to, all be in the same residence.
Thanks. Perfect. So we spent a lot of time. We should probably start kind of from the beginning. I would say to those parents out there, dadoos are not an opportunity from your kid to move from the basement to the backyard, those of us that have Velcro kids. So it is a little different than that. It's kind of an entire new housing type wave, however we want to look at it. We've been down talking to our legislature, our senators, our state representatives for years. We go down and have Hill Days and try to talk to them about, hey, some things that really are important to us. And I think you hit on it a little bit, which I think is really important to talk about. I skipped the subject of housing because I'm looking at, and I work with an enormous number of realtors, brokers, investors, builders, and we need to talk about attainable homeownership. And I've switched off from calling it affordable housing to attainable homeownership because the way that density and the way the comp plan or the comprehensive plans are set up in this state, it's forcing a generation into be renters. And it concerns me more than anything because, I mean, the number one wealth builder in the middle class is homeownership.
Right.
And I think I saw a stat here last year again, and I'd have to take a look closer, but the average tenant has like $8,000 in wealth. And I don't know that I call a couch wealth, but the average homeowner has 300,000. So if that gives us an idea of how we can create wealth for ourselves, even in markets with high interest rates like this, it kind of shallows out pricing a little bit. Even though we've had such a low inventory, it's been able to continue to escalate. But just the supply of what we have in the Puget Sound area because of growth management, because we have growth management lines, because the state and the Puget Sound Regional Council want us to stay inside those lines. This is literally the first time since 1996 that we're looking at in Snohomish County of actually increasing the supply of land down in the North Creek area of about 280 acres. We haven't approved it yet, but it's on the docket for coming inside the line. And think about that. We've had 28 years of amazing growth in this county, and we have not moved, other than some very, very small moves, the supply of land. And it makes it so that we're going to be taking a lot of property and going into high density, which is basically apartments, and taking away the opportunity for creation of homeownership. So the DADU law is something where we can take existing lots and houses and put some additional 1,000 square foot residences in existing neighborhoods, near roads, near hospitals, near services, and create a product type and a price that would hit our first-time homebuyer group, our millennial group, and then also hit our retired group. So it was a need that I sponsored an ordinance here in Snohomish County quite a few years ago called the Fee Simple Townhome. And it's going to easily be 50% of our housing type past single-family housing in probably the next 5 years. So it is important to have different types of housing and different type of homeownership options beyond a rental. And most of the DADU laws right now, or the ordinances that cities have and the county has, relate more to same ownership and rentals. And this is just a great opportunity since we're not going to resupply or move lines out very well. Then it's a great way to create homeownership and a product that fits all different groups.
So lots of questions that come to mind around this for me. And, I think if people are really thinking about this, so we have some rules now that are allowing for these 1,000, 1,200 square foot, depending on the city and whatnot, additional residences. But like you said, I think it does lend itself more to those being rentals for the person who owns the home, right? They build this DADU, they rent it out, and it's a rental income. Doesn't really solve the home ownership issue. So what can be done, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is there some opportunity to condoize those projects once they're built? Can those be sold individually? And I'd like you to explain a little bit more about the fee simple townhome concept. Is that like a condominium type structure, but different?
Well, to get that one off the table, fee simple townhomes are townhomes that are attached, but the party wall in between the two has a property line. So even though they're attached, they sit on their own lot. So the land isn't condominiumized.
Okay.
If that's a word, I don't know. So the land isn't condoed. You actually own the land underneath, and then you have a private road system that comes in and provides access to the
So you literally own half of a wall.
Yes, you're half of the party wall and half of the airspace in between. And it's less expensive than homeownership, but it really they aren't inexpensive to build. We always thought they'd be more inexpensive, but once you go to 3 stories and the amount of sprinklers and all the other things, it starts getting way more expensive. The DADU opportunity came about because of House Bill 1337 that we worked on down with our legislature to try to create, again, a homeownership option. And you are allowed under House Bill 1337 to condo your property now and create each one of those units depending on how many. In Seattle, they call it a 3-pack. Seattle was ahead of the state law, but there is restricted to like a 1 ADU, an attached dwelling unit, and 1 detached unit.
Okay.
And they've called them 3-packs down there for a long time. So it's subject to the existing residents, and these are accessory dwelling units. So they've been doing, and I looked at the permitting for the last 2 years. And for the last 2 years down in Seattle, they've permitted about 1,000 units in just the last 2 years. And you're lucky if you've got 300 single family residents. So it's literally taken over the marketplace down in Seattle, and there's hundreds of people building them. They're just a thing of the future and a thing that'll keep going. And they'll change designs, but Seattle was really pretty quick into getting into this. And I think I saw 52 applications, and they accepted 10 floor plans and exteriors and made those kind of DADU in a box. In other words, you could buy that plan, and the plans were already reviewed, and you could just stick that on your lot depending on how your property worked. So they did that. Kirkland did it. Kirkland has a little bit different, though. They kind of attach to the house. But like, for example, in Kirkland, you can build 1,000 square foot one together with another house, and it's $1.1 million. So it's $1,100 a square foot to buy a DADU or an ADU, or over on that side. In Seattle, a lot of them are 600 to 850 square feet or so, and they run about $1,000 a foot, depending on the marketplace you're in. So a lot of them sell from $650 to $850.
Wow.
So it's still an expensive product, but it's much less expensive than actually buying the residence. And I think the thing I was trying to push a little harder on was this stuff is all coming. In the last 30 years that I've been in the business, there's been 2 or 3 or 4 marketplaces where you go, okay, I can be an investor and do really, really well. I think money is always made. If you want to buy something and let it appreciate just like anybody else, that's fine. But your time frame, you're just going to sit and try to time the market. But this has changed the way you're going to have to look at real estate, because if it has existing CC&Rs that don't allow for anything more than a single family structure, that takes precedence. The law doesn't change CC&Rs. It's for all the properties like the older homes in North Everett, the Seattle homes in these old subdivisions that didn't have CC&Rs, and specifically a lot of them that have alleyways, because you're going to be able to put like a duplex DADU off the alley in Everett, or 1 attached and 1 detached, however the property fits up. And Everett's been super supportive in this. I think we've got 25 or 30 permits in right now that they're working on just in the city of Everett. And as everybody starts picking up on it, but it'll change the way brokers look at real estate, because now when they call up they're going to list a property, you're going to have to get the CC&Rs and look at it. Because if it's a CC&R community that has them that's limited to 1 structure, then there's a lot of people that want to live in that neighborhood, right? They're going to go, look, I don't want any more development. I'm not living in that. I want to keep my life simple. I'm living in the neighborhood I bought. I don't want it to change. Then you've got the other side that goes, hey, this is a heck of an investment. I'm buying a house with some property, and I can overlay a condo on top of that and probably spend maybe $8,000 to $10,000, overlay the condo, and have 1 or 2 additional lots I can sell, because it creates, let's say it creates lot 1 is the house, or unit 1 is the house, unit 2 and unit 3 are the 2 vacant lots off the alley. And then I can sell those, and I'm really a paper developer. So all of a sudden I become an investor, but I still own the home if I choose to, or I can turn it into a rental, move on to the next one. So it has the opportunity to really allow investors that don't have to be super sophisticated to just hire on 2 or 3 people, put a condo together. But it also, like in Everett, the plan is to be about 500,000. And to buy new construction in Everett for $500,000 when we know what's coming our way.
Right.
We know the Navy's going to be here at the start of 26. We know there's 5,000 Navy personnel, and usually you take a 3 times that for other people that move here with families and other suppliers. So we could add 15,000 people, and I haven't seen a plan to add any base housing. And I've seen that Congress allotted like 25 million, and possibly they put a building in Smoky Point, but that might be 100 units. So it doesn't really eat up the supply. And a big plan on a lot of service people is, buying a house, being stationed someplace else, moving, putting it in a rental pool. But what are you going to do with all those people? I don't want to see a generation of renters. I don't want to have Velcro kids. And now the average age of somebody moving out of their home's 26 now. And when I was looking at equity building, I saw that in 1996, I think it was around 25 or 26% of all home equity was with people under 36 years of age. Now that same age group only has 5%. So things have changed.
Because they're waiting so long to get into homeownership.
Yeah, the average marriage age is 30, and it takes longer to get in. And the idea that we could get something at an entry level, and that 1,000 square foot plan is a 1-car garage with 3 bedrooms, and it can be done somewhat unaffordably, or affordably, I should say.
Yeah.
And I mean, our numbers come in at under 300,000 to build the product. But if you're buying the house, cutting off 2 lots, and you want to be an investor and just sell the lots, great. In Seattle, they're going to change their ordinance to have to match the state, but the state mandates everybody, and the size of your county tells you whether you have to have what date this has to be done. And King, Snohomish, Pierce, and Kitsap have to have these new House Bill 1337 for dad use. They have to have them in place by, I think it's July 1st of 25. Everett, we got too early, and they were super supportive. They're a great housing opportunity. And so they got to it early, and they're just taking off. And I'm working right now on an amendment with Councilmember Dunn here in the county for Snohomish County. And we're going to do an amendment to the ADU ordinance for Snohomish County for properties inside the urban growth boundary, that we're going to amend it to meet most of the state requirements. So the county is going to have it in place early. Those of you that are investors, those of you that are listing properties that are going to be out in this area, understand that by the end of the year, we'll have that ordinance in place. So now you're not just selling a house on a lot, you're selling a house with 2 dadus that can be placed, and most county lots are bigger, so they have more room. So understand that now your valuation is the house plus 2 raw lots.
So would that encompass all of Snohomish County that isn't part of the city?
That would be unincorporated inside the urban growth boundaries, the stuff that's not 5-acre zoning or ag land or forestry or something like that. Snohomish County has an ordinance in the R5 zone that allows you to build up to a 1,250 square foot residence, but it has to be a rental.
Oh.
And I've pushed on them already to say, hey, what if I condoed that? And they're pushing back a little bit because the Puget Sound Regional Council doesn't want that much growth in the rural areas, and they're concerned about that. And I don't know that that's fair. I don't know that it's right. But
well, I'm gonna ask you about that in a minute, about these urban growth and what is the pushback and the logic between, for not extending that. But what it sounds like to me is that just like understanding highest and best use of a property today, I mean, it's up to a realtor to really understand, like, can this property be subdivided or whatever. With these new regulations and these new opportunities, really, you're going to have to really know your stuff if you're a real estate agent, understand CC&Rs. I can see where a divide can really happen. Some people might love the fact that they're in a community that won't have a bunch of potential renters in it, right, because of this. And others say, hey, that house isn't worth as much to me because it doesn't have the investment opportunity. So this is interesting the way this is going to unfold. But nonetheless, education sounds like the most important attribute of understanding this, and then being able to make sure that your potential borrower and or investor really understands what flexibility they have. I live in unincorporated Snohomish County in an R5 zone, so I'm very interested to talk to you more about that for personal reasons, because I did have some thoughts about building one of those, which would be a rental for now, but I thought it could be condoized in the future, and you're saying maybe not.
Well, give me some time.
Okay.
I think the politics of saying that, hey, you can only have 4.5%. So here's the weird thing that I just, again, without going, because the electeds have finally been in a position to understand some of the housing things we're working on, homeownership options. They are going to, a lot of the communities have gone to just, hey, we're going to pick this area and let it go high density apartments and leave the rest of our cities alone. But their problem now is 1337 in middle housing 1110 forces these cities, depending on their population size or county that they're in, to take on these new ordinances, and they have to have them in place because the law requires them to change their maybe individual plan. I know we went through a rough spot with the city of Edmonds for a little while about they were really pushing back on this and said, hey, but then they finally figured out it's a state law. I mean, we're just screaming to in the air and nobody's really listening, and got their DADU ordinance in place early. To get it over with, and we've been working with them on some other ordinances as well. But yeah, it's a good point. I'm going to keep trying to get the 5 acre, if it's in 5 acres, and you can put a 1,250 square foot rental residence on there now. It's the perfect product for a starter home or my group, that baby boomer that's retiring, selling the big house, and now I got an RV garage, and now I got an acre, and I'm fine. There's lots that are smaller than 5 acres. The ordinance allows you to put an ADU, an attached dwelling unit out in the R5, but anything over that. But when you look at the country in general, our area is a little bit unique because we've got a lot of environmental laws. We've got a lot of streams. The rest of the country, 31% of their listings is new construction. Our counties run anywhere from 11 to 15% of new construction. So it's really unique that we could sell close to twice as many of the product that we build. We just can't get them through the system fast enough. And so it's just kind of part of our geographic political domain that makes us a little bit slower in getting product approved.
Well, and it sounds like the available land to do those developments and whatnot's difficult too. Let's talk about that briefly, and then I kind of do want to touch on how this impacts, or what your thoughts are on how this is working around the country, if it's similar. But as far as the urban growth and expanding those boundaries out, look, I live out in the country, right? I live out in R5, unincorporated. I like it for the reasons I like it, but I don't know that that's enough of a reason not to allow for the for the growth. So what is the real main reason, or what are the main objections to allowing for that growth when, especially in our area, it does feel like it's necessary perhaps, especially if we're going to be able to provide more affordable housing, because it's the lack of housing availability that drives up prices in many cases. And so by having it's like we talk about wanting to promote affordable housing, attainable housing, as you were saying, but then we have such restrictive policies on building and growth. How does that work? Or,
I think you try to hit a balance in anything. I think compromise for both sides is probably the best way to run it, any type of business or just for society. What happened was we turned in a growth management plan to the Puget Sound Regional Council, which kind of oversees all this growth management. And this is through the Snohomish County Tomorrow. And we asked for, I think it was either 6 or 8% growth in the rural area. And I want to say 15 to 20% of our population, 80% of our property, but 15 to 20% of our population lives in the rural areas. And so we wanted to be able to continue that a little bit higher growth program. And they came back and said, no, you only get 3%. And then they in their mind compromised with us and said, okay, you can have 4.5%, but think about that for a minute. So in the next 20 years, we're supposed to get 300,000 people moving here, and we're about 830 to 850 just in Snohomish County. and we'll add 300,000 people. And what they're saying is over the next 20 years, only 4.5% of those will be allowed to build or develop out in the rural areas. So over 20 years, you'll have about 12,000 people. So that's about 600 a year of the 300,000 people that are going to move here will be allowed to either develop or build a custom house on their lot in the rural areas. It's just not what we had thought we should come out of this. You're right. The state has restricted, the Puget Sound Regional Council has restricted what I would normally say would be a normal growth pattern, because everything's about inside that urban growth boundary. You stay inside of there, you leave that area alone. And I don't know that just moving them at a quarter mile every time we do a 10-year update, there's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 houses and units that could be built just in a quarter mile stretch. We're not talking about moving it all the way out into nowhere. I mean, the zoning laws came up in the early 70s, said we've been kind of living a little bit with them. But again, 96 was the one that said your densities on this. There are situations down in Bothell on this side of the street, your property's worth close to probably $2 million an acre. And across the street on the other side, your property's worth $150,000 an acre, and it's just 60 feet away.
Yeah.
And the lines are a little bit too rigid. They don't spread out well enough. So that's my comment about there's a little bit too much control going on depending on the size. Like in Skagit County, most of their development is going to be in the cities. Their rural areas don't have much to be developed. Here in Snohomish County, we have quite a bit down in that North Creek area, Alderwood Manor, through that area, South Everett, over by Boeing, and down in that through Paintfield. Those areas are kind of our opens development in the county.
And it sounds like some of it you don't agree with, because obviously you've been advocating for more growth. But what's the reason on the other side to restrict it?
You just don't want people moving out into the rural areas. You want to leave. I think we look at it a little bit, like I said, compromise. Don't run all the way out there, but
why don't you want them out there? I mean, is it just there's not the infrastructure in place to handle the people? Is it just, hey, some people want to live in the country, let's leave them alone? I mean, I don't, like, what's the
I think
main
it's more
reason?
of an environmental thing, to be honest with you. And I think Maria Cantwell maybe sponsored this back in '96 when we put growth management in place. And I don't think we foresaw the how restrictive this was going to be. I mean, come on, not moving the lines for 24 years with the kind of population growth we've had. You're right. You hit it right on the head. You've watched it. That drives up pricing because land prices are going to go up. And then they drive up housing prices or homeownership prices. So everything's changing quickly. And depending on what marketplace you're in, like right now, I think Smoky Point's probably the fastest growing community in the whole state.
It's crazy.
I mean, we probably have 10 million square feet of commercial buildings, and I think coming up, and we probably have 9 million in all of Bellevue. And we probably have about 3,000 or 4,000 apartment units. And you probably are going to get about 4,000 employees going up there. Well, we've got about 5 or 6 properties in Stanwood to develop that are left. We've got a large area outside east of Arlington that still can come in, but most of it's been picked on. I really think like Mount Vernon's 22 minutes away. And Mount Vernon's price last year, actually, its median price went over top of Pierce County for the first time. So it's like $20-some thousand higher. And I think Mount Vernon's going to take off just because with the amount of employment that's going to end up at Smoky Point, they aren't going to be driving south.
Right.
Arlington and Stanwood aren't really there to eat up all that growth. I think the DADU ordinances, the middle housing ordinances and laws that are going to go into place, like Skagit County, because they're a smaller county and they're less than 250,000 people, they aren't going to be able to put, they have an extra year. So they don't have to do the DADU or the middle housing laws, Mount Vernon doesn't, until I think it's January 1st, 2026 or later. So they've got plenty of, they can just sit and wait.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. You talk about they choose a part of the county that they just like completely explode with growth. I mean, the amount of apartments and I don't know if there's similar condos or if they're all apartments, but Smoky Point, I mean, it's.
I don't have a.
I've never seen anything like it.
I don't think I have a client that has a stacked condominium. You call them flats.
Okay.
I don't think I have a client that has one in for application in this whole county, and there's 830,000.
So they're all apartments.
Everyone we're working on are apartments, unless it's just a small building in maybe Edmonds or Mukilteo or something like that. I don't see, and that's a need that we have. I mean, the number one buyer of condominiums around the number one group is like the silent generation, right? And then, the weird thing is the population has changed again. Back when COVID came, families were moving out of Seattle, and Seattle actually went backwards on growth.
Right.
They had like 8% of their city moved out in 1 year. It was like 60,000 people. It started to grow back again, but you'll see that who's growing back into the city is a lot of young couples and single people. And other families and things tend to be generating out towards the suburbs. And so we have to keep involved in that type of product, and we have to create a product and there's 6,000 to 8,000 condominium units in the Redmond, Seattle, Bellevue area in the system, but you could flip it in a switch and turn those into apartments and not do them as condos, because they just go in as a multifamily permit, and then the amenities you provide and the amount of things that you put in the unit kind of jump it up to a condo. So it's a product that we don't have enough of. It's a product that, because of legislation, guys are afraid to get sued, so they're not going to build it.
That was a big problem.
And I don't want to get my contractor's license tied up in a lawsuit and not be able to get any new insurance. But you've been a professional in this business for a long time. You've seen the changes. You're right. I'd like to see a balance between some rural. But in that 300,000 people, 225,000 of those people will end up from Everett to the county line south. That's a lot of people. Think about that for a minute. In 20 years, we have to build enough housing, 300,000 people in 20 years. And think 2008.
Between Everett and the county line?
225,000 between Everett and the county line. We're going to put 225,000 people inside those growth management lines. And think about that population for a minute. That's the population of Everett. That's the population of Marysville and the population of Linwood. We're going to have to build another Marysville, Everett, and Linwood in the next 20 years. And remember when our market crashed in 2008? That's already been 16 years.
Yeah.
I mean, things move quickly.
Faster than you think.
In real estate. And so homeownership's going to be kind of on the attack. I mean, as far as taking it out and putting in multifamily. So again, balance is something that works for your citizens and works for your government. We can't swing too far one way. And these bunt singles, we'll call them, middle housing. And you'll see middle housing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about middle housing. You mentioned it earlier, the House Bill 1110.
Yeah.
That's a new term to me. What is middle housing, and what did House Bill 1110 implement that we're starting to see change?
Perfect. It depends on your population, and there's a list of cities that the Department of Commerce put out, and I can give you those slides and kind of an explanation. But most of our cities get to take advantage of 1110 upon their connection to our largest city and the size of our population. So it depends on the size of your city. But I don't think under our present situation, like Sultan, Monroe, Snohomish, Darrington, Stanwood, maybe Arlington, I don't know that they were on the list of the Department of Commerce because they weren't connected to their urban growth boundaries weren't all connected to each other to our largest city. But since, the country of Briar, I kind of say that because Briar is the only city I've ever met that has all of the zoning is the same. It's all 12,500 square foot lots. There's nothing else in town. And so they'll have to get on board with this as well. And so will Linwood and Edmonds and Bothell and all the other Mill Creeks and all those guys. What happens is if you're under 25,000, I think the way it works is if your population's under 25,000 and connected with all the other UGAs, you automatically get 2 units per lot.
Okay.
And then if you're 25 to 75, you automatically get 2. And if one of them is affordable housing, you get to go up to 4 units. And if you're over 75,000, so Mount Vernon qualifies for like 1110. I'm not sure if I think maybe Linwood and Edmonds do. I know Marysville does. And Marysville is getting close to 75, so they may even bump up and they can go back in and opt in as their population grows. At over 75, you get 4 to 6 units for every residential lot, depending on how close you are to major transit stops.
And how large of a lot are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about 6,000 square footers.
Really?
So like in Shoreline, for a long time, we had what we called a six-pack, which were 6 townhomes that we could put on there. And you have a certain amount of lot coverage depending on it. But Everett, we're having discussions with them right now that says, hey, I'm not sure how you're going to pick how you're a quarter mile from what bus stop and how big it is. And bus stops keep getting bigger. And my understanding of a major transit stop, there's definitions. And one of them is that the community transit stops every hour. So it's not as major as we seem to think.
Right.
So Everett right now, we're discussing making all residential lots that don't have CC&Rs, that control it to 1 unit per lot. We're talking about somebody buying a property that could be 6 units in the future, not just one old house. So think about that as an investment.
Yeah.
Everything I've invested in over the years, besides just apartment buildings, which are kind of your standard annuity, you buy, hold, and increase rents, and then they change in value, has been something I can change the use of.
Right.
Because that's how you create quick cash.
So, in practice, this would, I'm assuming, have to mean you're buying an old house and dozering the house and building a 6-pack or whatever on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but if you're doing a DADU, it's just a building permit. It's
Right.
not land use. So you're going in and you're just fixing up. You're going to put a little blush on the pig, as they say, and then you're going to create a unit or 2 off the alley, and then you're going to build those. Again, this is a great opportunity.
That's like a free building lot.
Thank you.
It's crazy.
That's what it really is, because if you throw a condo on it, the condominiums is a state act. The cities don't legislate condominiums. So once you get them on there, and then unless they have an ordinance that says no private ownership, they all have to be the same ownership. You can't subdivide the ownership. Well, then under this new law, no, you can't restrict that anymore. It has to meet the state law minimums, or they get a chance to come after you. Or one of our building organizations will go, hey, that's not right. You're breaking the law, and we come after them. But think about that on the investment side. Like I said, you don't even have to be a true real estate investor to just buy a house and hire a planner and spend $8,500 and put a condo against it.
Well, I probably know like 6 people that are doing that right now.
You do know 6 people that are doing it, and I know a whole lot more.
I know.
But this whole 6-unit thing on any residential lot, and it might be a dozer type house, or it's a 1940s that wasn't taken care of. There's some areas in Everett that could really use kind of an update on the type of housing and put 6 units of townhomes. And you go from alley to street, and you have to come off the alley on most of them because they don't have curb cuts. But these changes we're going through right now, again, with a lack of future supply, with 300,000 people moving here in 20 years, that's what the state's telling us. And the idea that we're adding to these ordinances, and just for example, Everett putting 5,000 Navy personnel in this town over a certain period of time with those frigates moving into town, and then all of their surrounding support staff and families. I just don't know how real estate doesn't explode in this area.
Well, that's where I was going to go next. It sounds like everything that you're saying. If you're, looking to purchase real estate in the Puget Sound area, you're probably in pretty good shape. There's a lot of talk out there, doomsdayers, about a market crash, market correction. Even right now, if you look at like recent data, you're saying, I've seen stats like 7.2% of all listings have had price drops. People go, oh my gosh. I honestly, besides all the things that you mentioned, we've talked about this here with interest rates dropping, more people being able to afford homes because of, that are kind of priced out right now because of interest rates. Now you have more people that can buy, you have more people moving into the market. Don't have anything significantly changing. It doesn't sound like real supply, right? I think some of these things are helping create supply. They're also creating investment opportunities and maybe some rental units in some cases. But that's all very interesting. It makes me feel really good about the health of the housing market from an equity perspective here?
Well, take a look at, I think you have to have a 5-year plan. You can't have a 6-month plan all the time. And if you're looking for immediate gratification, I don't know that it'll always happen, because the idea that you're going to, drop it on black or red and put $100,000 on there and win all the time, there's timing things. Like there's been marketplaces where you just had to hold longer and you had to rent it longer, and then you waited for the timing and then you took advantage of that. And I think that even, like for example, I don't know if you do stocks and things very often, but it's funny, this sounds like a wife compliment, but it's probably true. I mean, my wife told me one time, hey, I think the thing you do best is know what you do badly.
Right. I do stocks poorly usually.
And that's mine. I feel like it's gambling to me because I don't know what's really going on. I don't understand certain industries, but I don't know their management and who runs it. So I kind of look at it like I get real estate. I understand the cycles. I get what happens. You just need to not over leverage. You need to have staying power, and you need to look at it as 5-year cycles. If you're in the production business, then yes. The cool thing about DADUs and middle housing is these are automatically rezoned for you to be given, and you don't have to go through all this process, and they're just building permit processes.
Right.
So 2 DADUs, you could literally get the building permit. Like in Everett, they're telling us 12 weeks for a building permit on DADUs, and we're testing them right now, and it's about a 5-month build. So all of a sudden, you can turn your money inside of a year. And if you're a real estate developer, you know that if you're doing platting and land use, it's a 3-year deal. And it's a lot of interest to pay without cash. So this has the opportunity to spiral quickly and get your product in and out of the market and not miss markets. Because a lot of times when you buy real estate and you have to develop it and go through the whole process, you're going to miss that market.
Sure.
And then it comes back in these 5-year cycles. But for me, I look at it over 20 years. I was looking at Skagit County, for example, and in 1996, I could buy a house for $106,000. Now I have to pay $585,000. And in Snohomish County, I think it was about $160,000, and now I have to pay $865,000.
Yeah.
So can I just sit on the sidelines and be an unbelievably wealthy guy if I sat there for 20 years and bought 3 homes? You bet. I'd kill it. I'm just going to put it in a rental pool and say, that's my 401k. We don't have retirement anymore. That's going to be my plan. That's why I say it's pretty hard to screw up real estate if you just provide yourselves with put yourself around professional realtors and brokers and mortgage people, and you'll be successful in real estate.
Yeah. I want to talk about the Navy. I'm not familiar with this, but I do see the growth that's going on down at the port, the expansion of, what's going on down there. Part of me is like, man, they're building all these new restaurants and all this new stuff. And I'm like, what is that part of what's fueling that? Is this expected growth that's happening here in Everett and Snohomish County?
Well, we had the port come in to make a presentation in Snohomish County tomorrow, and Glenn, one of the port commissioners, and we talked quite a bit. And part of it, well, like, for example, Lincoln Properties came back into town, and they're a huge developer, multifamily and everything. I think what we're really waiting for is condominiums on the port. It's a marketplace that back in 2007, I think it was the Oliver McMillan Company came in and was going to put 400 units. I had 150 reserve checks of $10,000 for those units set aside, and then the market fell apart. We refunded all of them. So I think what you're seeing now is the port's doing a great job of developing quality buildings. And now where the old yacht club was, Lincoln Properties is coming in, and I think they're going to do a bunch of commercial, about 260 apartment units. There's 3 or 4 restaurants going out by towards Marine View Drive, where some new restaurants are going. So everybody that we'd bring into town that we were talking to and showing property to, we're kind of talking about they always looked at the port and went, what's wrong with you guys?
Right.
How come you're
it's crazy.
Yeah, they're the largest, you're the largest pleasure port on the West Coast, literally. And I said that wrong, sorry. It's not a pleasure port, it's a pleasure craft port.
Yes,
so
yes. Pleasure craft, yes.
Let's get that correct. So, it has the opportunity to be just a shining star. And I think when I looked at them the other day, I think they've just about run out of residential units within their land supply under their comp plan. So they're going to have to put in, under this new comp plan update, they're going to put in for more residential units. But kudos to them, because if you drive down through there right now, we're just waiting for the walkability.
Yeah.
The walkability of the connection of a promenade and things to create that unbelievable environment like other cities like San Diego or something like that. And they're not very far away.
No, it's really cool. I have a boathouse down there. And so I do spend quite a bit of time, and I've been, because of that, obviously, I rent from the marina, so I get their newsletters and updates, and I've been to a few of their meetings, and it's really impressive what they're doing, and the walkability is starting to feel like it's kind of there, and then you get the overpass, and I just can't wait to see what they do next. But and you look at areas like Bellevue and Kirkland, who have such great waterfronts, and we just have never had that here, and what that's going to do to the city and to the county.
A walking score is a big deal.
Yeah.
On my group, young people, kids, dogs, everything. So that is one condominium market. Normally we don't, again, the condominium developers, are a lot of them from Canada and other places, and they aren't local, but somebody's going to have to come in and put a footprint or a thumbprint on that port and put some condominiums in.
Well, I think the only residential down there is all apartments
now. Yeah. And we just need somebody to make a commitment to that, and somebody that can self-insure and doesn't want to worry about lawsuits and come on down there and build a stacked condo, because we know they'll sell.
Yeah.
And we just need to get a ownership commitment down there, and it would really help the city as well, because the rent down there is, in my mind, really high, and it's paid pretty well. So, but you have a bunch of more units, and I don't know if Lincoln's going to do apartments. They usually do apartments. I don't think they'll do condos, but it's going to be a real star here in the next 5 years. But we've got a lot of reasons to go, wow, this can take off, and that's why I feel over a 5 or a 10-year call on your investment in real estate, I think you'll have a really difficult time. And we actually do classes about what's happening here in the county. We've got 300 condominium units going in Maltby, townhomes. Maltby, the commercial development, we've got about 200 with Lennar and about 90 with possibly Westcott. They're putting the property together. So that's Maltby's going to become a housing community, and it's attached to Woodinville. So that's going to be a ridiculous price. Our median price on new construction in Monroe was over $1 million.
In Monroe?
In Monroe.
Wow. And
75% of those buyers were Bothell to the east side because they're trying to make a decision. That house was $2.25 million in Kirkland. So the brokers are doing a great job of taking their clients out at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and showing them that it's 8 minutes from Bothell to Monroe. But other than that, it's still an amazing change. And I mean, the idea that Monroe has a 7-figure median price is amazing.
Yeah, I flipped a house out there, and luckily the prices are high enough I was able to get out of it, because it was a little bit, it got a little out of hand. But
now I think flipping might be an interesting strategy, only in the way that I'm not a flipper anymore. I can put dadus all over these properties.
Right. And
I think a lot of the flips are older homes anyway, so a lot of them didn't have CC&Rs.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to go out into the county and pick off larger lots and even duplexes. I'll see guys now, we have an ordinance in Snohomish County that any single family lot that's 7,200 square feet, you can put a duplex on it. Well, now I can add 2 dadus. So now I'm going to take a single family lot and I'm going to get 4 condominium units off of one single family lot out in the county. And you can make money off that.
I mean, thinking about all this, if I'm a real estate agent or a lender, which is primarily who watches market shares, man, now's the time to really not only understand what's going on in your local market, but become an expert at navigating the financing options that support this type of housing.
Yep.
And that's a big one. A lot of people don't understand condos. There's challenges, right? I mean, there's insurance issues right now with condos, insurance issues all over the place. But with condos, it's it can be even worse. But financing options, utilizing renovation products, to be able to build, DADUs and ADUs, and how those work and which product types work and so on and so forth. Utilizing one-time close products, that will allow that and facilitate that, because it's not all universal. But really becoming an expert at this, because it does seem like, and we're going to talk about what you're seeing around the country, but it does seem like the growth we're going to see, at least in the Puget Sound, and I'm sure other markets are similar, that have these same restrictive growth boundaries. It's these types of changes, which we've saw in California already, that are going to create the housing investment opportunities of at least the near future. And you need to know how to help facilitate your clients. It's one thing to take advantage of that if you're an investor, but if you're a lender or a real estate agent, how are you advising your clients, supporting your clients in being able to take advantage of these opportunities as well? So that should be a huge takeaway for anyone watching this podcast. I want to ask you, we've talked a lot about, the local Seattle, greater Puget Sound market. What are you seeing? I'm a little bit familiar with California, what's happened there. What about the rest of the country? Are you at all familiar with what's going on there? Are these similar things that people should be, if I got people watching this all across the country, in the Midwest, in the East Coast, is it likely these types of things are being discussed right now? Is this a pretty universal thing out there?
I think in a lot of cases it's an infill city thing.
Okay.
We're one of those states that a lot of what we're doing is infill city because of our growth management lines, but everybody's got some type of growth management going on. As you get further out into the Texases, the Californias and things like that, those huge communities have restrictive covenants that aren't going to allow you. So it's kind of an infill. And the good thing about being an infill city thing is that's not a destination. People live, work.
Right.
The whole idea behind this type of product was you live, work, everything, and eat all in the same area. So we aren't using cars and things as much. We're commuting by bike, we're walking to things, and so it's going to be mostly infill. But you go around the country, and everybody's starting to do something similar to this because it's just time. And as we evolve, and as our population continues to grow, we're trying to figure out, it used to be that a 6,000 square foot lot was kind of like, oh man, not one of those small lots. Well, now it's 3 homes on a 6,000 square foot lot. And in anybody that got a backyard, even 10 feet of backyard was like, wow, that's not bad. I got an outside space. And I think you'll take a look at smaller spaces quite a bit all over the country. Pick a marketplace, and as long as it's a city or it's a well-populated area, you're going to see all of this type of product. We just are one, other than down in Bellevue and Seattle, we're really missing on that condo flat process. We could really hit a few marketplaces, and a lot of those buyers down in that marketplace, again, are young people moving back into town. They said in the next decade, 40% of all homeowner growth are going to be young singles.
If I remember correctly, one of the challenges with the condos and why people aren't building condos, and I think you touched on it briefly, was the fear of class action lawsuits and litigation. Has there been any movement? I thought there was some talk of maybe some legislation to help protect that from that. Has there been movement on that? Or
thanks for bringing that up. We pushed for some legislation at the state level because, again, condominiums are a state act. And we had some relief. In other words, you have to show cause now before you can just sue your developer or your builder. You have to show that the roofs are leaking or the windows are leaking or things are falling apart, plumbing isn't working, whatever it might be, and you have to give them the right to cure.
Okay.
So
because literally, from what I understand, there was attorneys, and I don't mean to bag on attorneys, but there was attorneys that were, even buying units in complexes, looking for even the smallest of defects, and then creating class actions to go after, certain developers and whatnot. And it really shied people away from it, which is sad because I haven't seen hardly any condos being built, and it is one of the factors that helps, people be able to achieve home ownership at a lower entry point, build equity, and not have to be a renter. So.
Well, some of the construction liability attorneys, they just wait for the filing for the homeowners association. They watch for them at the state, and then they send out their letter, and they go, hey, and again, I'm not going to paraphrase it. I'm not making fun of anybody because we all solicit business in our own way. It is, hey, here the bond is only good for 2 years, then the LLC disappears and they're gone and you never find them. We need to go through and do an inspection. The sad thing was about 5 years ago, they'd build a condo and there wasn't any problem. And then the tent would go up and the scaffolding and they'd strip all the siding and then they'd strip some roofing and then they'd pull some windows and make sure it was built correctly and there's no mildew inside on the Tyvek. And you were just going, wow, really? So the tents would go up on these things as fast as you finished them. But now with the idea that supposedly you have to give them the right to cure, you have to say, hey, my roof's leaking, you need to fix it, you need to get an inspector, and we want you to have that done. You're given the right to cure within a certain time frame, and then you have to show fault to actually start an action, not just, hey, we're worried about our building having something wrong with it, and your bond expires in 2 years, so
let's go digging for problems.
So I'm going to file an action against you.
Yeah.
I'm after you. So no, that wasn't fair. So that was one of the things that was passed that we thought would help. But then again, let's think about this. If I'm a contractor and I build a building and my livelihood is being a contractor and I need liability insurance and I have to fill out my liability insurance and then they ask me, are you the defendant on a liability lawsuit? And you have to say yes, and here's the case. Well, then if your insurance gets turned down, what do you do for a living?
Right.
So a lot of our people locally are just saying, hey, forget it. It's not worth the risk of my business. So we've stayed away from it. So I'm not sure. It's a lot of the really big guys that do some of the self-insured that do those buildings down in Seattle, and they're big guys. So they are comfortable, and they've done them in Vancouver and all over the country.
Right. So one other area, and I don't know how we're doing on time, but we're probably over. But one area I want to just touch on briefly, and it seems like it's been talked about as a solution to affordable or attainable housing, is like micro type units, right? Your miniature homes, if you will, for lack of a better term, but high density, very small, type of units. Are you seeing this taking off? Is this a proposed solution that people are embracing? I mean, is that the future of attainable housing, or not?
It's a great point. You'll see all of the above. It just depends on your marketplace. Is a 400 square foot apartment something that would be a condo in the future? Yes, because I feel like everything else that has to hit a certain price. And again, we have all kinds of different demographics that buy. And so if I'm a young couple, or I'm like there's 10,000 people a day that turn 65, and I'm going, look, I'm selling out of the big house. I want no maintenance, and I just want to be able to come, use my unit, and get out, and come and go and walk to eat and all those types of things, then maybe that's something I look at as well. And so I think any metropolitan city is going to have that product without a doubt. Again, we got to do a little bit of, and not all states have the same legislation. They don't all have the same construction liabilities, so they're built a little bit differently than maybe our legislation is. Some are more consumer friendly than others. So yes, that's a great point. But I think anything that people can create ownership with, that you're going, well, yeah, I like that. And yeah, I can do that. And yeah, I don't see any liability in the future. Then other people are going to want that as well. Just understand we're going to get smaller and denser. I was looking at Kirkland the other day, and we were looking at a marketplace, and I probably 5-6 times a day look at properties for people to try to help them. And I was looking at Merritt Homes over there, and they had a 1,400 square foot house. They're doing a little 2-story for $1.4 million or $1,396,000, whatever. And then they had a 1,200 square foot house that was like $1,196,000, and I saw pre-sale pending. So I think our single family structures are going to go into more of the cottage style. These had garages and everything, but I think you'll see that type of housing become a really big deal, because I don't know that I want a townhome. And the weird thing is, when we sponsored the townhome ordinance, I remember working on it. My son was an athlete, and he had transferred back from the University of Florida, and he was at the University of Washington. And I had 3 guys that were athletes in a 3-bedroom, 700 square foot apartment that just smelled like feet. It was horrible. And I just went, wow, you guys can't live like this for 3 years. So we bought a townhome down there, figuring, hey, we'll just live off appreciation and we'll make real money on this over time. And it's been an amazing investment. But I took a look at that product and said, hey, we should have that fee simple townhome up here in Snohomish County. And I thought in 09 and 10, when we sponsored it, I thought it was because, okay, all of us were buried in our mortgages because we were upside down and we couldn't sell.
Right.
So the only people that could buy would be millennials because they weren't upside down. You know, the number one buyer of a townhome is a 50-year-old professional woman or couple. And we never saw that need. But it was, I'm a move down. I want no more maintenance, just enough room for my little dog for the patch in the backyard. And I want to be able to come in home, and I don't want another remodel project. And I'm getting near retirement, and it's just time to move. So it's amazing how demographics change as time goes on and people's needs. Not everybody does want the RV garage in a 1-acre lot with a 1,250 square foot Rambler. Some people are just saying, hey, I want to stay close to services. I want to walk to eat. I want to be around my kids. And my kids are probably renting, so I'm going to stay in this area. And gosh, it was amazing. I take a look at the amount of 2,000 square foot, 3-story townhomes that have double masters, and it's a single guy or a single gal that buys it, and kids come and go and stay with them.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you've hit it on the head. We'll keep getting smaller, and then hopefully our price adjusts so that people can get into they can enter into the housing ownership market. And thanks for bringing up Attainable, because I just want us to stay on top of that, because people should have the opportunity to build wealth, because employers aren't out there to tell them, they pay them a wage, and anybody, and wealth is built through investments in my mind. And this is one way to do it if you're not a stock market person and your family needs a place to live.
Yeah. Well, look, Mike, first of all, thank you for taking the time to come on, and really thank you for your contribution to the community. I mean, the work that you do obviously is tireless and extensive. And what I love about you is that you have a heart for helping people and the real practicality of attainable housing, while also understanding that, yeah, it also creates investment opportunities and wealth building opportunities for those that want to do that, you know, as well. And that in and of itself seems like an interesting balance, but one that you do very well. And it's clear when, you know, you talk to you that you understand clearly both sides of that, and that it's, you know, we need to provide housing for people. It needs to be attainable and affordable. But we also, you know, in doing so, it's okay if that also creates investment opportunities for those that are going to, you know, then build out and capitalize on those opportunities to provide that housing for people. And you need both, and it's all okay. And not everyone has that kind of 360 view of it like you do. So thank you for that. Thank you for always being a resource. I know, like I said, not just me, but so many people reach out to you, you know, for advice around the community. You've been great for that. Look, I understand this was a little bit of a deep conversation. If you don't live here in the Northwest, you might be going, this conversation makes my head spin a little bit. And if you're not into real estate, then maybe not your episode. But I promise you, there is a lot of people that are going to tune in and watch this episode who just love everything that you had to say and the advantage that it gives them, especially in if their job is in mortgage and real estate. So, well,
we do a lot of classes introducing people to kind of how they can do this. We do a lot of them for the real estate community. But think back, I mean, you and your partners have created a lot of homeownership opportunities, and you got to feel good, because over the years before you took over a large management position and oversaw a lot of different people, I mean, you remember those days of helping somebody get into a home.
Oh, yeah.
You thought, man, that was really fun helping those folks out. That's a great couple, and they're going to enjoy that for the rest of their life. And they were grinning from ear to ear how excited they were to get in. And I think about that back when we first bought a home and we were lucky enough to get in. But I remember I was excited because interest rates went fixed at below 13%.
Right.
I bought at 12 and 7/8 going, I'm brilliant. I waited them out. And then obviously within 6 months, it dropped to like 9. But anyway, it was all about timing and getting your family into a home. But you guys do a great job. And there wasn't a lending opportunity. Think about that. I mean, we wouldn't have the kind of opportunities for people to have homeownership, and we had the luxury of working with a fair number of your people.
Yeah, I mean, we all play a role in it, right? Yeah. And I think it's that passion that I had. I mean, I started in this business when I was 20 years old, 19 years old, and helping people go through that journey, like you said, I think it's still that excitement around the homeownership experience that even though I don't work with clients at that level today, it's still that passion and excitement for the industry that has kind of kept me in it, So I love it. I like to understand kind of what's happening in the world around us. A lot of people throw around affordable housing, and it's almost like a tagline or a cliche thing at this point. But really talking about what steps are being taken, what steps people can take to attain home ownership, I think is super important, and things that we should talk about, because part of our job, in my opinion, if you work in mortgage and real estate, is taking this dream of home ownership, which for so many people is an unattainable dream, and making it a reality, and helping them to not only figure out how they can afford and make that work, but that it's worth the risk to do it, that it's worth the process of getting prepared to purchase a home. And a lot of people are scared. They're for good reason, but sometimes because the media tells them to be scared. Their parents went through the housing crash, so they're scared. There's lots of things going on emotionally for people, and more people are, being okay with this idea of being a lifetime renter. And that's sad, because the stats don't lie about what it does for wealth creation for your family. Yeah. So anyways, for the part that you play in this, I appreciate it. I'm definitely gonna, try to have you back on at some point, especially as we see how these things evolve with the market, and maybe we could have some more specific conversations. We covered a lot today, but if there's certain things happening, maybe I'll ask you to come in and speak to that. But for all your time, thank you. For those of you watching, look, thanks for taking the time to watch Market Shares. It's a little bit longer episode, but when we have an interesting conversation like this, I think that it's worth the time to invest in it. Look, if you get value out of these conversations that we have, and I know so many of you do that have shared with me, please share it with somebody. It's one thing to like and subscribe. I hope that you do that so you don't miss our episodes that come out every single Friday. But let someone else know. If you know someone local in real estate, specifically in Washington, Snohomish County, share this episode with them to help educate them on what's going on in the marketplace, and tell them to connect with Mike Appleby. He is all around doing classes, like he said, on these topics, and you can learn from. So reach out and get connected into really what's going on, because it's changing. These house bills are passed. They're being implemented all around the state as we speak, and you want to be ahead of it. So, yeah. Yeah,
we have a road show we're just going around working with the cities to try to say, hey, let's move a little faster. Let's try to get this going a little quicker. And think about all the small home builders that get back into the market because they don't have to be real estate developers. They can buy, and as you talked about, financing models and creative financing and bringing in partners and cross-collateralizing is going to get a lot of these guys the ability to start building investment groups. I've got a couple of groups that are they're all putting in money together, and they've got a fee builder, and they're looking for investment opportunities like these. And it's like I said, you can get in and out inside of a year. So again, kind of an interesting time. Like I said, over the next couple of years, some people have some opportunity to really do well in real estate.
Well, and on the other side of that, there's lots of talk about, a recession and what happens in a stock market. I would be scared right now a little bit. Like, I'm no stock advice guy. I personally dabble, usually lose. When I dabble, I'll hear somebody say, "Oh, this is going to be an amazing stock," and I'll go throw some money in and I lose. So that's not my strategy. My strategy is different and diversified in other areas. But look, I mean, if you're concerned about a recession, what it's going to mean, if you're looking for a way to create more income, maybe purchasing a property that has these opportunities. Maybe you consider that versus, the perfect dream home that you thought was the right home for you and your family. Maybe you find a home that does have the capability of adding other units or whatnot, make it more of an investment, because there's definitely opportunities out there to do that. So
I take a look at even Skagit County. I mean, they went up like $70,000 in 1 year, Skagit County. And King County and Snohomish County went up a ridiculous number in a marketplace with some tough interest rates. I just feel it's kind of a hedge. It's a place to hide for money and still make money at the same time. Again, if you know how long it takes to be a real estate developer and how much time and effort it takes, and if the state's going to come in and tell your property that no, you can't have 1 unit on there anymore, you have to put 6. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys doing that for me, because otherwise I'd be sitting there knocking on the door for the next 2 years trying to get more units out of this thing rather than have to fix it up. So great timing.
Yeah, well, and I mean, look, let's be honest. You have to be either a Mike Appleby or a very sophisticated investor to be willing to take on a project that required subdivision and multiple, to create multiple lots. Those opportunities have always been out there, but man, they are limited to people who really know what they're doing, and you can get yourself in trouble if you don't know. You think you're going to get 10 lots and you'll end up getting 5, and you way overpaid for the property and all that stuff. None of that stuff. I don't want to say none of that. There are some considerations, I'm sure, when it comes to this, but there's a lot less. You do not, to your point, you do not have to be a sophisticated, advanced investor to take advantage of some of these changes.
State law talks about residential lots and just look for CC&Rs, and it's almost like I'll just wait for the tide to come in.
Yeah.
It's going to come in, and you're just going to, and again, if you want to wait 3 years or 5 years or whatever, it'll just start to keep percolating up a little bit. Remember these 3-packs they were doing in Seattle when they first started, ridiculously low. And now they've taken off. And again, I probably know 100 brokers in just the Seattle market that have become 3-pack builders.
Yeah. I mean, look, I didn't want to own a bunch more rentals, but I feel like I need to go buy some lots in Everett or something. I don't know. You might have inspired me, Mike. All right, you guys, we're going to wrap it up here, but thank you for your time and attention. I hope you enjoy Market Shares. Like I said, please share it with people you think would find this conversation interesting. Mike, thank you for your time.
Thanks for me.
And till next time, take care.